Well, hello everybody, Nick here. In a couple of weeks, I'm headed up to Algonquin Park for some winter photography, and I wanted to give a little bit of an overview of what kind of plans I'm making and what I'm packing for that winter photography trip. So I've actually booked one of the Ontario Park's yurts at Mew Lake. I think Mew Lake is the only campground that's open in Algonquin, or at least on the Highway 60 corridor of Algonquin. Now, I'm there for 2 nights at 3 days, so I think I'm going to be able to do two sunsets, two sunrises, this astrophotography shot that I think I want, and also I've got a day planned where I might stop at 2 or 3 places, but I may hike out to a waterfall that's a little bit off the beaten track. So that is the plan that I've got so far. I haven't really planned out exactly where I'm going to be going, but I've definitely taken a very good look at some of the spots that I've curated over the years, and I've chosen a few of them that I think are going to line up with the sun nicely or have very good, sort of winter scenery during the time that I'm there. Also, this week I signed up for like a moon phase calendar that has the phases of the moon. So I know that when I'm going to be there is going to be a new moon, probably very dark skies if the weather permits. But then also there's going to be the beginning of a meteor shower. I don't know if I'm going to get lucky enough to see that because it doesn't necessarily overlap, but that may be something that I end up capturing, which I'm very excited for. All right, let's talk a little bit about the gear I'm planning to bring. So when I plan for any photography trip, I'm often making very sort of strategic decisions about what I want to bring. And one of the things that I think about is fighting my sort of own anxiety and doubt. And I have to force myself to simplify. I have to force myself not to do the wrong thing. One of the things that I find in winter photography is that I will always end up packing too much and my backpack will just be way too heavy. And I'm trying to avoid that. So for this year, I'm going to bring my smaller packing cube that goes inside my Shimoda backpack. It's a little bit smaller, maybe like 4 or 5 inches smaller. The idea here being that I can only really fit a couple of lenses and my camera body, and then I've got to obviously bring my vlogging gear, so that's going to add into the weight of all of this. But what I can't do is bring a third lens. So I'll have a little pack of things that I can put additional lenses and different camera equipment in, and I'll leave that in the car. But I want to make sure that my bag has as little space as possible for camera gear so that when I'm picking, maybe I want to bring this 16 to 35, or maybe I want to bring this extra lens, I'm actually removing something else to put that in. That's going to keep my weight low. Now, usually in the winter, you're wearing many, many more layers and often very heavy clothing, and that's definitely true of the stuff that I have. And so you want to keep your camera gear as light as you can, because for me, you really want to be comfortable. You want to be engaged and you want to be excited to get to the location. And if actually you're just like slogging it through the forest and, everything is becoming super heavy and you're getting hot and you're getting tired, you're really not going to want to take that photo at the end, and your creativity is going to be gone. So I'm going to be bringing, obviously, my Sony a7 IV and the 20 to 70 millimeter zoom lens that I have on it right now that I'm recording with. That lens is very quickly becoming my favorite lens. It's just so incredibly sharp and very versatile. And 20 millimeters is like very close to the type of wide angle shots that I really like to take. And so you can really get a lot of the shots you want. Anyways, the other things that I'm going to be bringing are my 70 to 200. Now, I don't have anything that's going to go any longer than this. I don't have like a 100 to 400, but I'm thinking about doing that. But this is mostly there to get anything that I'm going to want that's like an intimate scene with maybe some fog, some snow or some ice or interesting light, or if I come across some wildlife. Now, normally when I, come across any type of wildlife, I'm usually not very close to it by the time that I notice it, and I don't end up getting a very good shot because it takes me a little while to get set up, but I always bring something like this just in case. The other lens I'm looking to bring is my 14 millimeter f1.8. And this again is going to be for those astro shots, but I think I'm actually going to leave my 16 to 35 at home because it's just so freaking heavy. Metal body, this like kind of initial Zeiss lens that Sony released, and it weighs a ton. And I find that like this lens really does all of the very wide angle, ultra wide angle shots that I would ever want. 14 millimeter, not really much wider than 16 millimeter, and you can kind of always crop in if you need to. So this thing, very compact, very light, and it's going to fit perfectly in my camera bag, and the weight is just nothing. So I think it's going to be a really good addition to this trip. Now, as I was mentioning, one of the things that I always do is I'm thinking of these scenarios like, oh, I might want this or I might end up doing this. And so I bring like the gear for it, but I never end up using it. It just sits in my bag. And I think that's what's going to happen maybe with this 55 millimeter. I really can't think of a reason why I would want to bring a portrait lens. And I've already got an f1.8 that I need for Astro. And so unless I'm really like trying to zoom in on something close, or maybe I come across a bear and I'm close enough to get a portrait of it, and it's just sort of very nice and lets me do that. Um, I don't think I'm going to bring this lens. I think this probably is just going to stay on the shelf for this trip. The other thing I bring with me anytime that I'm going to be hiking or walking around on slick ice and snow is these ice spikes for my boots. These I think I got on Amazon for like $30. And other than sort of sounding a little bit Christmassy, they're really just good for the winter because they really dig into this ice and snow. I was at Johnson Canyon in Banff National Park. Maybe actually it was this time last year, and I had these on. Before I had put them on, I was sliding all over the place, but the trail had gravel down on it, and I didn't really feel like I needed to put the ice spikes on. The second I saw other people with these on, I was like, "Damn it, Nick, you got to put these on." So I put my ice spikes on, and I was able to just like run across this trail no problem, where previously I was sliding around. I can't talk enough about just how useful these things are. Get them on your boots, get them in your pack. Yeah, they're a little bit cumbersome to put on, but once you get them on, they're just on there, and they do so much to keep you safe on the ice. The other bit of safety equipment is this sort of secret weapon that I got last year. Let me show you what this is. So this is a rock climbing ice screw. And basically, if you're a rock climber, you're climbing up this rock wall, and what you're looking to do is put something in the ice, screw it in, and then be able to clip your carabiner in to keep you safe. But what a landscape photographer can use this for is to test the depth of the ice, because this thing will just screw into the surface of ice so easily. Basically you just kind of jam it in, it'll go in a little bit, and then using this handle, you kind of screw it down. And what'll happen is the snow and the ice will immediately start sort of coming up this top. And then after a moment, you will sort of stop feeling friction as you've gone through to the other side of the ice. And then usually some of the like lake or river that you are standing on, the water will just start shooting out the top. And with that, you can use it to judge like how deep that ice is. Now, I'm definitely not an expert on safety on ice, but I look for all of this little screw part to be completely in the ice before I'm willing to walk out on it. I'm not the lightest of guy, and I'm wearing all of this gear. And so to be able to feel confident that I could walk on this ice, I sort of bring this with me and check it every 100 meters or so as I'm walking across the ice to make sure that I'm still standing on a safe spot. This thing, however, a little dangerous to bring, and you got to make sure you pack it well because the blades that are on the tip of this are just razor sharp, and you put that on any fabric or like in your camera bag, and it's just absolutely going to tear it to shreds. It comes with this little piece of rubberized plastic that goes right on the top, and I try to just make sure that that's going to stay on. When I get it in the bag, I make sure that it's like nice and contained so that it's not going to rip anything that I have. Okay, the next little piece of like safety equipment that I'm going to be bringing is this satellite communicator. Now, I've only had to use this a couple of times, and I've never used this SOS button, but this thing has sort of the best like mapping and GPS, especially when you're walking around on trails, and it gives you an opportunity to pull down the weather at your current location and sort of send check-in messages to your loved ones to let them know that you're okay. I usually bring this thing anytime I'm going to be heading out into the woods, and definitely if I'm going to be going more than like a kilometer or two from the car. Anything that's like beyond the yelling distance, where if you find yourself in a bad spot or you're injured or something like that, you wouldn't be able to just like call for help. Well, this thing's going to allow you to do that sort of by this satellite. So I'm always bringing it. Makes me feel a little bit safer about what I'm doing. All right, I want to touch a little bit on batteries. Now, I only have 2 batteries for my Sony a7 IV. Now, these batteries are a little bit newer, and they do hold their charge for longer in the cold, but lots has been said about keeping your batteries warm so that they hold their charge when they're in your camera. Now, usually what I'll do is I'll take the battery out of my Sony camera. So, it'll be in my bag without a battery. And I'll take both of those batteries and I'll put them in some like jacket pocket, on the inside close to my body. Really, as long as they can keep like body temperature or a little bit above, they're going to be perfectly fine. But once they get that sort of deep freeze, I've had batteries in previous cameras that the battery drained down to like 20% with only an hour of sitting in a cold backpack. So I try to make sure that the batteries that I have can be warm so that I can make sure I get maximum battery life out of them and I'm not rushed to take a photo. Let's talk a little bit about clothing. Now, years ago, I was in the Canadian Army and we did a lot of winter exercises, sometimes a week at a time in 40 below weather. I learned a lot about the type of equipment that you want to have to keep you warm, how to layer it, and how to wear different clothing for different weather in the winter. For weather between 2 and 5 degrees, I usually go for a simple base layer, nylon pants, and a wool sweater. I might also swap out the base layer for a bit of a thicker one if it's a little colder. On top of all that, toque, gloves, and a fairly thin fall jacket. As the temperature drops below zero, I swap in waterproof snow pants and a proper winter jacket. When the conditions get really bad, I upgrade to insulated pants, snowboarding overalls, and a proper parka. It's at this point that I bust out my photography gloves, a shearling hat, and an awesome wool scarf. I picked up a few tips about how to wear clothing in the winter that I'll share now because I think they're important. The first one is that a lot of people talk about layering, and layering is very important, but you can also layer too much that you're just kind of, covered in layers. And that's not going to help because you're not going to have any range of movement and you're not really going to want to move and you're definitely just going to sweat. So I think when picking layers, the fabric is very important more than the quantity of the layers that you pick. And also, you want to be able to know that you can remove those layers easily and sort of, put on a different outfit overall based on the conditions as they change. But you need a balance between weight reduction and bulk reduction and layers to be able to really get to comfortable in the winter. The second is that staying out in the winter for a long time has a lot to do with liquid water than it does anything else. If you're sweating or you've got melted snow next to your skin, that is going to freeze and it's going to freeze you. So staying dry by avoiding sweating, staying dry by not getting your clothes too wet while you're out in the snow makes a huge difference in your comfort level when you are standing behind your camera trying to get a great shot. Well, that's all I've got for today. I'm hoping that you'll join me on this trip in a couple of weeks and see the beautiful photos that I hope I get. As always, thanks for watching. Bye for now.